Hi students, Miss Collins here. Sorry I'm still not feeling too hot. I've got a little voice right now, so I am going to record the next chapters for you to watch since I'm not at school again. I'm really hoping I'll be back tomorrow though. So today I want to read Mixing the Dream as well as Journey to London. So if you could get out your copies of the B.F.G. That would be great. And turn to Mixing the Dream. Mixing the Dream. It was dark now. The night had already begun. The B.F.G., with Sophie sitting on his hand, hurried into his cave and put on those brilliant, blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table. "Stay there, please," he said, "and no chittering. I is needing to listen only to silence when I is mixing up such a naughty, black-cicated dream as this." He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous empty glass jar that was the size of a washing machine. He clutched it to his chest and hurried toward the shelves on which stood the thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing the captured dreams. "Dreams about giants," he muttered to himself as he searched the labels. "The giants is guzzling human beings. No, not that one. Nor that one. Ah, here's one, and here's another." He grabbed the jars and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dreams into the enormous jar he was clutching, and as each one went in, Sophie caught a glimpse of a small sea-green blob tumbling from one jar into the other. The B.F.G. hurried toward another shelf. "Now," he muttered, "I is wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls, and about boggle boxes for boys." He was becoming very intense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling inside him as he scurried back and forth among his beloved jars. There must have been 50,000 dreams altogether up there on the shelves, but he seemed to know almost exactly where every one of them was. "Dreams about a little girl," he muttered, "and dreams about me, about the B.F.G. Come on, hurry up, get on with it. Now where in the wonky world is I keeping those?" And so it went on. In about a half an hour, the B.F.G. had found all the dreams he wanted, and had tipped them into one huge jar. He put the jar on the table. Sophie sat watching him but said nothing. Inside the big jar, lying at the bottom of it, she could clearly see about 50 of those oval sea-green jellyish shapes, all pulsing gently in and out, some lying on top of others, but each one still a quite separate individual dream. "Now we is mixing them," the B.F.G. announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of frobscottle, and from it he took out a gigantic egg beater. It was one of those with a handle which you turn, and down below there are a lot of overlapping blades that go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom end of this contraption into the big jar where the dreams were lying. "What?" he said. He started turning the handle very fast. Flashes of green and blue exploded inside the jar. The dreams were being whisked into a sea-green froth. "Oh, the poor things!" Sophie cried. "They is not feeling it," the B.F.G. said as he turned the handle. "Dreams is not like human beings or animals. They has no brains. They is made of zazamoose." After about a minute, the B.F.G. stopped whisking. The whole bottle was now full to the brim with large bubbles. They were almost exactly like the bubbles we ourselves blow from soapy water, except that these had even brighter and more beautiful colors swimming on their surfaces. "And keep wetting," the B.F.G. said. Quite slowly, the topmost bubble rose up through the neck of the jar and floated away. A second one followed, then a third, then a fourth. Soon the cave was filled with hundreds of beautifully colored bubbles, all drifting gently through the air. It was a truly wonderful sight. As Sophie watched them, they all started floating toward the cave entrance, which was still open. "They're going out," Sophie whispered. "Of course," the B.F.G. said. "Where to?" "There's a little tiny dream bits that I isn't using," the B.F.G. said. "There's going back to the misty country to join up with proper dreams." "Oh, it's all a bit beyond me," Sophie said. "Dreams is full of mystery and magic," the B.F.G. said. "Do not try to understand them. Look at the big bottle and you will now see the dream you is wanting for the Queen." Sophie turned and stared into the great jar. At the bottom of it, something was thrashing around wildly, bouncing up and down and flinging itself on the walls of the jar. "Good heavens!" she cried. "Is that it?" That's it, the B.F.G. said proudly. But, oh, it's horrible, Sophie cried. It's jumping about. It wants to get out. That's because it is a struggle humper, the B.F.G. said. It's a nightmare. Oh, but I don't want to give the Queen a nightmare, Sophie cried. If she is dreaming about giants guzzling up little boys and girls, then what is you expecting it to be except a nightmare? The B.F.G. said. Oh, no, Sophie cried. Oh, yes, the B.F.G. said. A dream where you is seeing little chidlers being eaten is about the most frightsome, struggle-humping dream you can get. It's a wopsy-grob switcher. It's all of them riddled into one. It's as bad as that dream I blew into the flesh lump eater this afternoon. It's worse. Sophie stared down at the fearful nightmare dream that was still thrashing away in the huge glass jar. It was much larger than the others. It was about the size and shape of, shall we say, a turkey's egg. It was jellyish. It had tinges of bright scarlet deep inside it. There was something terrible about the way it was throwing itself against the sides of the jar. Oh, I don't want to give the Queen a nightmare, Sophie said. I is thinking, the B.F.G. said, that your Queen will be happy to have a nightmare. If having a nightmare is going to save a lot of human beings from being gobbled up by fearsome giants. Is I right? Or is I left? I suppose you're right, Sophie said. It's got to be done. She will soon be getting over it, the B.F.G. said. Have you put all the other important things into it? Sophie asked. When I is blowing that dream into the Queen's bedroom, the B.F.G. said, she will be dreaming every single little thing-a-ling-a-ling you is asking me to make her dream. And about the part of me on the windowsill? That part is very strong. And about a big friendly giant? I is putting in a nice long gobbet about him, the B.F.G. said. As he spoke, he picked up one of his smaller jars and very quickly tipped the struggling, thrashing Trogglehumper out of the large jar into the small one. Then he screwed the lid on tightly on the small jar. That's it, he announced. We is now ready. He fetched his suitcase and put the small jar into it. Why bother to take a great big suitcase when you've only got one jar? Sophie said. You could put the jar in your pocket. The B.F.G. looked down at her and smiled. By goggles, he said, taking the jar out of the suitcase. Your head is not quite so full of grime sludge after all. I can see you is not born last week. Well, thank you, kind sir, Sophie said, making a little curtsy from the tabletop. Is you ready to leave? The B.F.G. asked. Oh, I'm ready, Sophie cried. Her heart was beginning to thump at the thought of what they were about to do. It was a really wild and crazy thing. Perhaps they would both be thrown into prison. The B.F.G. was putting on his great black cloak. He tucked the jar into the pocket of his vest. He picked up his long trumpet-like dream blower, and then he turned and looked at Sophie, who was still sit on the tabletop. The dream bottle is in my pocket, he said. Is you going to sit in there with it during the travel? Never, cried Sophie. I refuse to sit next to that beastly thing. Then where's you going to sit? The B.F.G. asked her. Sophie looked him over for a few moments. Then she said, If you would be kind enough to swivel one of your lovely big ears down, so that it is lying flat like a dish, that would make a very cozy place for me to sit. By gumbo, that is a squackling good idea, the B.F.G. said. Slowly he swiveled his huge right ear until it was like a great shell facing the heavens. He lifted Sophie up and placed her into it. The ear itself, which was about the size of a very large tea tray, was full of the same channels and crinkles as a human ear. It was an extremely comfortable place to sit in. And the nice thing about being there was that she could whisper directly into his ear. Be careful not to fall down my ear hole, the B.F.G. said. You'll be giving me a cronking earache. Sophie edged away from the large hole just beside her. You're tickling me a bit, the B.F.G. said. Please do not jiggle about it. I'll try not to, Sophie said. Are we ready? Ah! Yelled the B.F.G. Don't do that! I didn't do anything, Sophie said. Ah! You's talking too loud. You's forgetting that I's hearing every little thing-a-ling-a-ling 50 times louder than usual, and there you is shouting right inside of my ear. Oh gosh, Sophie murmured. I forgot that. Oh, your voice is sounding like thunder and trumpets. Oh, I'm so sorry, Sophie whispered. Is that better? No, cried the B.F.G. It sounds as though you were shooting off a blunderbuss. Then how can I talk to you? Sophie whispered. Don't, cried the poor B.F.G. Please don't. Each word is like you is dropping buzz bombs in my ear hole. Sophie was speaking right under her breath. Is this better? She said. She spoke so softly she couldn't even hear her own voice. That's better, the B.F.G. said. Now I's hearing you very nicely. What is it you was trying to say to me just now? I was saying, are we ready? We is off, cried the B.F.G., heading for the cave entrance. We is off to meet Her Majesty, the Queen. Outside the cave, he rolled the large round stone back into place and set off at a tremendous gallop. Journey to London. The great yellow wasteland lay dim and milky in the moonlight as the big friendly giant went galloping across it. Sophie, still wearing only her nightie, was reclining comfortably in the crevice of the B.F.G.'s right ear. She was actually in the outer rim of the ear near the top, where the edge of the ear folds over, and this folded over bit made sort of a roof for her and gave her a wonderful protection against the rushing wind. What's more, she was lying on skin that was soft and warm and almost velvety. Nobody, she told herself, had ever traveled in greater comfort. Sophie peeped over the rim of the ear and watched the desolate landscape of giant country go whizzing by. They were certainly moving fast. The B.F.G. went bouncing off the ground as though there were rockets in his toes, and each stride he took lifted him about 100 feet in the air. But he had not yet gone into that whizzing top gear of his when the ground became blurred by speed, and the wind howled, and his feet didn't seem to be touching anything but air. That would come later. Excuse me. Sophie had not slept for a long time. She was very tired. She was also warm and comfortable. She dozed off. She didn't know how long she slept, but when she woke up again and looked out over the edge of the ear, the landscape had changed completely. They were in a green country now, with mountains and forests. It was still dark, but the moon was shining as brightly as ever. Suddenly, and without slowing his pace, the B.F.G. turned his head sharply to the left. For the first time during their entire journey, he spoke a few words. "Look quick over there," he said, pointing with his long trumpet. Sophie looked in the direction he was pointing. Through the murky darkness, all she saw at first was a great cloud of dust about 300 yards away. "Those is the other giants all galloping back home after their gussel," the B.F.G. said. Then Sophie saw them. In the light of the moon, she saw all 9 of those monstrous half-naked brutes thundering across the landscape together. They were all galloping in a pack, their necks craned forward, their arms bent at the elbows, and worst of all, their stomachs bulging. Their strides they took were incredible. Their speed was unbelievable. Their feet pounded and thundered on the ground and left a great sheet of dust behind them. But in 10 seconds, they were gone. "A lot of little girlsies and boysies no longer sleeping in their beds tonight," the B.F.G. said. Sophie felt quite ill. But this grim encounter made her more than ever determined to go through with her mission. It must have been about an hour or so that the B.F.G. began to slow his pace. "We's in England now," he said suddenly. Dark though it was, Sophie could see that they were in a country of green fields with neat hedges in between the fields. There were hills with trees all over them, and occasionally there were roads with the lights of cars moving along. Each time they came to a road, the B.F.G. was over it and away, and no motorist could possibly have seen anything except perhaps a quick black shadow flashing overhead. And all at once a curious orange glow appeared in the night sky ahead of them. "We is coming close to London," the B.F.G. said. He slowed to a trot. He began looking about cautiously. Groups of houses were now appearing on all sides, but there were still no lights in their windows. It was too early for anyone to be getting up yet. "Someone's bound to see us," Sophie said. "Never is they seeing me," the B.F.G. said confidently. "You is forgetting that I is doing this sort of thing for years and years and years. No human being is ever catching even the smallest wink of me." "I did," Sophie whispered. "Ah," he said, "yes, but you was the very first." During the next half an hour, things moved so swiftly and so silently that Sophie, crouching in the giant's ear, was unable to understand exactly what was going on. They were in streets. There were houses everywhere. Sometimes there were shops. There were bright lamps in the streets, and there was quite a few people about, and there were cars with their lights on, but nobody ever noticed the B.F.G. It was impossible to understand quite how he did it. There was kind of a magic in his movements. He seemed to melt into the shadows. He would glide. That was the only word that was to describe his way of moving. He would glide noiselessly from one dark place to another, always moving, always gliding forward through the streets of London, his black cloak blending with the shadows of the night. It's quite possible that one or two late-night wanderers may have thought they saw a tall black shadow skimming swiftly down a murky side street, but even if they had, they would never have believed their own eyes. They would have dismissed it as an illusion and blamed themselves for seeing things that weren't there. Sophie and the B.F.G. came at last to a large place full of trees. There was a road running through it and a lake. There were no people in this place, and the B.F.G. stopped for the first time since they had set out from his cave many hours before. "What's the matter?" Sophie whispered in her under-the-breath voice. "I's in a bit of a puddle," he said. "Oh, you're doing marvelously," Sophie whispered. "No, I isn't," he said. "I is now completely boggled. I is lost." "Oh, but why?" "Because we is meant to be in the middle of London, and suddenly we is in green pastures." "Don't be silly," Sophie whispered. "This is the middle of London. It's called Hyde Park. Exactly where we are." "You is joking." "I'm not. I swear I'm not. We're almost there." Side note, Hyde Park is kind of like Central Park, like in New York, how it's a really, really big park right in the middle of the city. "You mean we is nearly at the Queen's Palace?" cried the B.F.G. "Oh, it's just across the road," Sophie whispered. "This is where I take over." "Which way?" the B.F.G. asked. "Straight ahead." The B.F.G. trotted forward through the deserted park. "Now stop." The B.F.G. stopped. "You see that huge roundabout ahead of us, just outside the park?" Sophie whispered. "I see it." "That's Hyde Park Corner." Even now, when it was still an hour before dawn, there was quite a lot of traffic moving around Hyde Park Corner. Then Sophie whispered, "In the middle of the roundabout, there's an enormous stone arch with a statue of a horse and a rider on top of it. Can you see that?" The B.F.G. peered through the trees. "I is seeing it," he said. "Do you think that if you took a very fast run at it, you could jump clear over the Hyde Park Corner, over the arch, and over the horse and rider, and land on the sidewalk on the other side?" "Easy," the B.F.G. said. "You're sure? You're absolutely sure?" "I promise," the B.F.G. said. "Whatever you do, you mustn't land in the middle of Hyde Park Corner." "Don't get so flushed," the B.F.G. said. "To me that's a snitchy little jump. There's not a thing-a-ling-a-ling to it." "Then go," Sophie whispered. The B.F.G. broke into a full gallop. He went scorching across the park, and just before he reached the railings that divided it from the street, he took off. It was a gigantic leap. He flew high over Hyde Park Corner and landed as softly as a cat on the sidewalk on the other side. "Well done," Sophie whispered. "Now quick, over that wall." Directly in front of them, bordering the sidewalk, there was a brick wall with fearsome-looking spikes all along the top of it. A swift crouch, a little leap, and the B.F.G. was over it. We're there, Sophie whispered excitedly. We're in the Queen's back garden. All right, and that's the chapter. So hopefully I will be able to be back tomorrow. So please be wonderful for your guest teacher again today. And some things to remember. Please turn in your Scholastic News to your homework bins today. That's due today. And then make sure you finish your Roald Dahl book by tomorrow. Make sure you come with it finished tomorrow. And make sure you have your job done for your book group. And you also have that white sheet of paper completed. So you are ready to start the little project that you're going to do to have ready for our Roald Dahl Day next week. Okay? So, let's review. Turn in Scholastic News. You can then work on finishing your book. If you're in a total panic, like, no, I'm not going to finish the book while I'm in class today, you can take it home, although I need you to return it tomorrow morning, okay? So that it's there for the classes. And make sure you have your job and the white sheet of paper done. Also, make sure you get your reading log signed. Make sure it's updated for the last 2 weeks, so you have that tomorrow. And also make sure you do Kid Biz, the Penguin article. And that's about it. So, yeah, I hope you're having a good day. I hope I feel better so I can come see you tomorrow. Where's Seffi? Did you find her? Where is she? I stopped in to school and saw that you had gotten overall a very nice report, so thank you for that, and I hope I get to see another one tomorrow. Okay, so have a wonderful evening, and I will see you back at school, okay? Love you all. See you soon. Bye.